Hey friends, it's Melissa Morrow with Vintage Redesign, and today I'm going to mix some of my own custom paint for today's projects, and I'm going to start out with using DIY's paint in the color Firestarter, and then I am going to mix a little bit of layered chocolate in that. I made it last year and I used it in a lot of projects that I loved. Of course, each batch comes out just a little bit different. For project number one, I have a bunch of these bedposts that were cut down for me by my son. They originally looked like this. My son cut them down for me using a radial arm saw or compound miter saw, and I'm going to use my special blend here, my pumpkin spice, and I'm going to give each of these 2 coats of paint. After painting, I gave each of these pumpkins a quick 220 grit sand, and then I'm going to wax them all using DIY Paint's clear wax. People ask me why this is the wax I always use when I sell so many different brands, and the truth is it is soft and creamy. I love the way it works into things. I love the way it smells, and of course, it's safe to use in any environment. When working with DIY paint, anytime you top coat or wax, you are going to see that it immediately gets a lot darker, and then as it dries, that the color lightens up a little bit. So when you're painting, it will always dry lighter than when you paint it on, and then when you're waxing or top coating, it will always again dry lighter, but it will not dry as light as it was or as pastel as it was when you painted it. This is sort of the unique nature of using a clay-based paint as opposed to using a chalk-based paint. I love that. I think it's fun, but it does create a little bit of a freak out factor for some people. Because I want that hazy look, I am going to add a little bit of DIY's white wax and then DIY's dark wax to each pumpkin. I'll apply some of it and then just wipe it off. And this is going to give some variety of tone and texture to each pumpkin, making them all a little bit unique. Okay, these all dried overnight, and you can see how adding the white and the dark wax actually give it some additional detail. Next, I'm going to show you my secret weapon to add even more depth to these. A lot of people have been asking exactly where we're going to be this fall, so I thought I would put it all down on paper for you to look at. If you are going to be in any of these areas, we would love for you to come and see us. We will have a 10 by 40 booth in each of these locations, so we'll have lots of goodies for you to check out. We hope to see you there. So I'm going to use Prima's Lucky Emerald. This is what it looks like in the container. You can apply it with something, but I'm going to just use my finger. And I'm not going to add very much. I'm just going to kind of add little bits here and there. And if you think about a pumpkin, they tend to have little bits of green in them often, especially where when I was using the heat gun, I actually made the paint bubble, which I kind of love on these pumpkins because it created cool opportunities for you know, those like warty pumpkins. So I can just add little bits of green here and there, not a ton, but it just adds another bit of depth. And if I weren't doing this on camera, it would take me 5 minutes to do all of these pumpkins, but it does add a really nice bit of color, texture, and technique, making your pieces different than everybody else's. So while these are drying, I am taking some shower curtain rings that I thrifted, and I am going to use a pair of pliers. It took me a couple tries to figure out the best way to do this, but I'm just going to hold them and twist. Do come right off. Okay, so I found these in my scrap pile because I have 4 pumpkins that I don't have curtain hooks for, so I'm going to cut these off and use these as toppers. I didn't have my camera on a tripod to show this, but this is a bandsaw, and it's easily the safest one to cut off little things like this. A radial arm saw is too big, and you're going to take a chance of kickback or hurting yourself. A scroll saw would work as well, but it would be very time consuming. A bandsaw with a small blade is easily the best saw to take small spindles like this apart. I used hot glue to attach the curtain ring gemstones, and then I also used some spindles, and then I accentuated them with a little greenery and a piece of ribbon.
There is only one of you, only one of me. There's a million of those who won't let us be. But they're not gonna see me bleed. Cause baby, I got you, you. I've been beaten to the ground, dragged across the dirt. I've been scared to live.
Last year, after fall, I bought a bunch of these bags of pumpkins and gourds on clearance, and the white is very nice, but it's not really my style, and I'm going to make them look a little bit more upscale. I'm going to start this off by mixing up some Fusion pressed fern, which is a nice, very modern, sort of a deep emerald, and I'm going to mix that with some salt wash. My goal is to add a lot of texture here, but I don't need to completely cover the pumpkin. I'm going to be painting over this then with my pumpkin spice. This technique creates a lot of great texture. I did use a heat gun, and you do want to be a little bit careful because using the heat gun can cause the styrofoam of these pumpkins to start to melt, creating additional texture. But when they start smoking, you've gone a little too far. So now I have a wet rag, damp I should say, and I am just going to go over some of these textured areas where we had used the salt wash and Fusion, and I'm just going to pull back some of that green. I have only done one coat because I'm going to do a white back. I don't really want a lot of white, but a little bit doesn't bother me very much. Okay, now I'm going to take some DIY paints, layered chocolate, and I'm going to paint all of these little plastic stems. I don't think that they look particularly realistic. And let's face it, they're never going to look completely realistic, but I think we can make them look much better. So I don't need to cover it fully. It's okay if some of that gray is showing, and even okay that we got some green or orange on there. I just want it to look, you know, better. And I think personally that this is a good start, but of course we're going to do more later. As I was painting the stems, I accidentally got some paint on the pumpkin. And so I used my fingers to sort of swish it around and decided actually I really prefer this one over this one. So I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to go back and do the ones that I didn't do. And what it basically is just sort of patting it around. And then I used my thumb just to smear it around a bit like that to give it a little bit of, you know, bleeding out. And so I think that looks better than that. But you know, it's up to you. And just like these pumpkins, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to clear wax them with DIY clear wax, then add some white wax and some dark wax, and very possibly add a little bit of that minty green, which is the Lucky Emerald by Redesign with Prima. For the squash that came in the bag, I am going to go ahead and again make my own combination. So I guess we'll call this squash yellow. And I am mixing up DIY's Liquid Sunshine and some of DIY's Crinoline. And what I'm looking for is a nice soft yellow that's still a little bit bright. Think about what the color of a squash looks like. I actually Googled it to kind of try to get it right. Anyway, we'll mix this up and then we will paint the squash just like we did the pumpkins. I'm going to take these bundt pans and other coppers and I am going to give them a makeover with some Dixie Belle patina. But because they're actual metal and I want to do this, I'm going to start with some Prime Start, which actually you would use on any metal surface before you do the copper patina paint and stuff. And it actually protects this from rusting and deteriorating. Or if the piece has already rusted, this will be a good barrier for you to start the process. The one thing I don't like about these copper pans is how flat they're going to look. So I am going to go ahead and add some salt wash to my prime start. This is probably very off label, but it's okay. I'm going to do it anyway. Once that has completely dried, I'm going to go ahead and paint these copper. I know it seems a funny thing because they were copper before, but this is much less bright of a copper. It's more of a deep copper. And I'm going to mix it well and then go ahead and paint with it. We're going to paint one coat and let it dry 100%. Now we are going to go ahead and put our second coat of the copper patina over the pan. And while it is still wet, we are going to start dabbing on our liquid patina spray. I have different brushes for each of the 3 different patina colors that Dixie Belle offers, and you could choose just one of them, but you know, I'm a little bit more is more kind of girl, so I'm going to use all 3 of them. And you do not have to use a spray bottle. You can certainly pour them into a little cup or a dish and dab them on so you have a little bit more control. If you choose to use them without the spray bottle, then be sure that you are using a different brush for each different kind of patina and that you do not put the patina back in the bottle. The reason that this works is because there are metal flakes in the copper paint or iron paint or bronze paint, whichever one you choose, and those will be activated through the patina. And one other note is I received this from one of my customers is you should either do this wearing gloves or be sure that you do not have any silver or non-gold jewelry on when you're doing this. She tarnished one of her silver rings. Remember, this is meant to tarnish metals. So if you're wearing them on your hands and you get them on you, then they will tarnish. And speaking of that particular customer, she sent me some photographs that are absolutely amazing of her using the Dixie Belle patinas. Little Pink Pickup had a plaster sculpture that she wanted to look like aged bronze. So this is how it came out. I am absolutely astounded. I will be sure to leave her links in the descriptions below. For my next 2 pans, I decided I was going to use a toothbrush and use the splatter method. I actually think these came out the best, so I'll be doing this method again using the various patinas. Yeah, you could kind of get this effect if you just use the spray bottles, but it is a little bit different using the flicking method because you get such a variety of splatter sizes. I let those dry overnight and I'm back the next day, and I need some stems for these pumpkins as well. So I'm taking this chair piece and I'm going to trim it down. I decided to, on one of them, leave the lump kind of there on the side and the other one to go without it. That way, if they were next to each other, one would be slightly taller than the other. In the end, you can't really see it. Because the spindle that I want to use in the middle of this pumpkin is like it fits right through the hole, I'm going to need to find a way to attach this. The way that I've decided is I'm going to use some scrap wood, and I am simply going to try to do this one-handed. I'm going to trace the circle. You know what, I'm going to use a Sharpie. I'm going to trace the circle on here, and then I'm going to make it a little bit wider because you see I have a little lip that it will sit on. So I'm going to trace this circle. I'm going to cut it out with a bandsaw, and I have 2 of these, so I'm going to do 2 of those, and then I'll be able to glue this in place. I'll be able to put the circle down and then glue, or probably better nail this into place. Okay, you can see it's got a nice fit here. Now at the bottom, the walls do kind of curve out, so it's hard to see, but it's got a nice fit here in the bottom where it's resting on that lip. So all I need to do is add some like E6000 Bondo, something like that. That's gonna make them stick together. And then I can use my nail gun, my pneumatic nail gun, and pop that right into place. And so I already had these spindles cut like this in my box, but I've decided that I think these would look better as stems if I cut them here. So that's next on my list. I have trimmed them up, I have attached all of the pieces, and now I've decided to add a little bit of some Spanish moss into that circular area where it's sort of an open crevice, and then I will add some florals. All of these florals were in some kind of grouping that I had thrifted, many of them in other vases or other displays. So again, this is an opportunity just to sort of recycle the items that I have on stock. And so here's a look at our final projects along with some of the other pieces that we did earlier today. I would love to get your feedback on which project was your favorite and any that you plan on trying at home. This was a great way to get rid of a lot of stuff that's been crowding up my shelves. I hope that you enjoyed it. And of course, all products are available online at vintagebedesign.com. If you love video like this, please be sure to hit like, subscribe, and share with a friend. It really helps.